Okay, so Friday's topic, last topic of the political geography unit, is going to be challenges to sovereignty, which is going to focus on the results of devolution and different examples of devolution and communication technologies, as well as supranationalism. And then 4.10 is the consequences of centrifugal and centripetal forces. So coming back to those words that we studied last week related to culture. So, all right. So the first topic of the challenges of sovereignty section really just kind of talks about how devolution occurs when kind of two major categories. Devolution occurs when a state fragments into autonomous regions or subnational political territorial units. That's a lot of words, but let's just break that down. So, an autonomous region would be a region of a country that has some degree of self rule outside of the central government. A subnational, on the other hand, then a subnational political territorial unit, lots of words, like I said, subnational just means below the national level, and a political territory, so like a province or a state or a region that is has some degree of power below the national level. So really, an autonomous region, we oftentimes they have some degree of self rule, and then this would be kind of more like a federal system where a region has some degree of ability to make its own laws, and we have maybe multiple regions. So in the AP curriculum, they do point out these four countries, and I highlight this because if they say, like, if the AP curriculum says specifically, oh, Spain, Belgium, Canada, Nigeria, then you should know something about those four if they come up in the test. Now, last year's test did use Spain and Nigeria as our examples. So my guess would be they're not going to do that again in terms of devolution, but you still should know something about them. So Spain is very complicated. Spain has a number of different autonomous communities, but the ones that we kind of focus on are Catalonia, which really has declared their independence, although Spain is not letting them go. The Basque region, these are considered to be historical nationalities, so groups of people that see themselves as distinct from the rest of Spain. So the Catalonia, the Basque region, which have their own language, their own identity, their own ethnicities, and Galicia in this region up here. However, there are a number of autonomous regions. So although Spain is considered to be a unitary state, because they have so many autonomous regions, they by many are kind of considered to be a decentralized unitary state, meaning that they have, they're not necessarily a federal system. They don't have a federal system set up like we do, where it's very clear what each region has power over, but they do have a number of autonomous communities. Some other examples, this is Belgium. So Belgium is the country that is split. It's split into different provinces, but very regionally, we have the Flemish-speaking people in the north. We have the French-speaking people in the south. We have some German-speaking regions over here. And then we have Brussels, which is the capital, which is bilingual. And so the province is very binational, but has that more of that those different systems in place so different regions get to choose their own language. In Nigeria, not only this map is the same map that I used before, but not only do they have different laws in northern Nigeria and southern Nigeria, but they do have a federal system. So they have subnational political units that have their own ability to make some of their own laws, but they also have a central government. And then Canada has a province system. They're federal government as well. But some of the more notable ones would be Quebec and some of the rules that Quebec has put in place in terms of the French language, and then some of their territories, and they do have some autonomous or indigenous groups which have some degree of autonomy, particularly in Nunavut in the north has some degree of autonomy due to their high indigenous population. Okay, so another way that devolution happens is, so all of those the ones we just talked about, all of those are examples of like federalism or autonomous regions where the federal government is really giving some regions power, oftentimes to try to persuade them to stay in the country or to give them some degree of power so they feel that their voices are heard. Another way that devolution occurs is when states full on disintegrate. And so there are 4 examples. Once again, these are 4 examples that the AP curriculum lists in this section. And so you should know them if they are listed here. And so, I don't think we did a very good job. I didn't do a very good job of talking about Eritrea or maybe the former Soviet Union, but we did talk about South Sudan and East Timor when we did the case studies of devolution. But Eritrea is, so we're going to start with Eritrea then. Eritrea is, this is Ethiopia, so this is the Horn of Africa would extend out here. We have Eritrea, we have Sudan, we have Ethiopia, we have Djibouti. But Eritrea is a small country north of Ethiopia that was an Italian colony, and post World War II, it was annexed by Ethiopia. So Ethiopia was an independent country, and it annexed Eritrea after the Italians were removed. And then in 1990, and really the Eritrean-Ethiopian War lasted for nearly 30 years, where Eritrea then finally did get their independence from Ethiopia around 1993 or 1991. I can't remember. I was looking at these before. I can't remember the exact. Early 1990s, Eritrea did get independence as an independent country, so that'd be an example of states disintegrating due to devolutionary forces. We have the similar situation in South Sudan. South Sudan being the newest country of the world. 2012, South Sudan gains its independence from Sudan. East Timor gained its independence from Indonesia in 2002 or 2001, early 2000s. So I think this is outside of South Sudan, this is the second of the newest countries in the world. And then this is the former Soviet Union. And all of these countries that you see that are not Russia were all part of the former Soviet Union. They had a federal system, so these different regions were different satellite nations within the USSR. But in the early 90s, when the Soviet Union broke apart, all of these countries gained their independence. So we have a number of Baltic republics, 3 different Baltic republics: Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. These more Eastern European countries: Belarus, Ukraine, Moldova. The ones in purple here are disputed territories. So Crimea is listed separately, but that's because Russia has now annexed Crimea. And then some of these regions over here of the Caucasus regions and then the Central Asian regions were all part of the Soviet Union as well, but now they're independent countries. Okay, so continuing on, this is a kind of a large section with challenges to sovereignty. Advancements in communication have facilitated devolution, supranationalism, and democratization. So the concept here is, as we continue to have advancements in technology, social media, the extent of our ability to communicate with each other, these are all leading to they're speeding up at times or leading to devolution, but also leading to supranationalism, the ability of countries to come together to work for a common cause, and also speeding up democratization, which is the movement towards more democratic societies. And so you see over here this picture: revolution tools, AK-47, machete. Okay, let's get rid of those. Instead, we're going to use Twitter, we're going to use Facebook, although revolutions are not all non-violent today. But this idea of using Twitter, Facebook, social media to bring people together to spread political beliefs are all kind of now revolution tools that people use. This is a picture from, I actually don't know what this picture's from. I think this picture might be either from the Arab Spring or potentially the Black Lives Matter movement. More challenges to sovereignty: global efforts to address transnational and environmental challenges and to create economies of scale, trade agreements, and military alliances help further supranationalism. So supranationalism is the idea that countries come together, they give up some degree of their sovereignty over to the organization in order to either work together for a common cause or to fight or or they believe they're going to have some sort of benefit by joining the organization. So this picture right here is the logo of the United Nations. But a supranational organization can challenge state sovereignty by limiting the economic or political actions of the member states. And going forward, these are the six. I didn't underline this one. These are the six supranational organizations that you should know from this unit. So the United Nations, which is nearly every single country, is more of a humanitarian. However, they do have economic arms of the United Nations. They have political units. They have a military. So they're much more than just humanitarian. But they're the International Peacekeeping Organization, the European Union, which we spent plenty of time talking about, and the Economic and Political Organization of the European Union. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which is our political and military alliance. The Arctic Council is a supranational organization existing of 8 different countries and 6 indigenous tribes. And they're all Arctic countries. So the United States, Canada, Iceland, a number of countries, I can't remember the exact 8, but they're Arctic countries. And they work together to deal with some of the issues surrounding the Arctic, as well as environmental, global warming, climate change issues, but also are kind of like that political organization that kind of fights for the interests of the Arctic countries and indigenous tribes. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, is an economic organization made up of Southeast Asian, I believe it's this one right here. So you have this olive green countries. So China is not involved, Japan is not involved. They're not the big superpowers, but they have an economic organization, a trade organization, most likely purposely to offset the influence in the region of China, Japan, and some of the big superpowers in East Asia. And then the African Union, let's see if the African Union is on here. There's East African Community. I'm not sure the African Union might be too large. But is a similar trade agreement, a trade union that is within Africa. And then we did talk about like the Mercosur, which would be the South American. That one really comes up in the economic unit. We talked about OPEC, the oil and petroleum exporting countries. So all of those you should kind of know. OPEC and Mercosur more come up in the economic unit, which will not be in the test, but these are the 6 that are mentioned in the political geography unit. So make sure you pay attention to those and you know a little bit about those. All right, last topic for today is the topic 4.10, which is the consequences of centripetal and centrifugal forces. And so really this one just kind of lays out, once again, our centripetal forces are going to be our forces that bring countries together, and our centrifugal forces are going to be forces that divide nations. And so you can kind of see that here. But our centripetal forces in terms of politics would be ethno-nationalism, so bringing countries together in a nationalistic way. So forming a national identity would be a centripetal force. Creating more equitable infrastructure across the country would be a centripetal force. Increased cultural cohesion, so trying to bring people together. Even if you have a very diverse group of people, trying to create that national identity or that cultural identity for your country can be very much of a centripetal force. And then centrifugal forces, failed states, so countries that are economically devastated, uneven development. So when you have regions of the country that are wealthier and regions of the country that are poorer, that can pull the country apart. Stateless nations, particularly stateless nations that exist within the boundaries of your country, and when people are demanding a region of the country to call their own. And ethnic nationalism. So when you see your nationality as superior, or you want to separate and you don't get along with other groups of people. So ethnic nationalism. We talked about how this term nationalism, can be a positive thing. So this creation of nationalism and bring people together, but it also can tear people apart. And so if you think about Yugoslavia and how the several different national groups within Yugoslavia drove each other apart, or they got driven apart because people were very much centered on their own nationality, and there wasn't any cohesion. That's a centrifugal force. All right, so that sums up political geography. I know political geography, as well as agriculture next week, will be kind of a lot of content, but stay focused, and we will get through till May 12th when we got the exam. All right, have a good weekend.